Hey guys, this is Faster U4 brought to you by FitLab, Tailwind Nutrition, Biomaxa and Capital Cycles. If you're a cyclist, you want to go faster? Then let's giddy up. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Faster U4. Brought to you by FitLab, Tailwind Nutrition, Biomaxa and Capital Cycles. Hey! Bike racing on the weekend. There was good and there was bad. I'll tell you all about it. 2 races, which was a bit unusual, but I got up on Sunday morning and decided to do it all again. So I'll tell you what that was all about. North Island Team Series Race 4 and the Wellington Masters Cycling Club Hillclimb Time Trial of the Katarawa. So yeah, what I learnt, especially from the North Island Race 4, about something that went wrong for me. I'll tell you all about it. I'll tell you what grinds my gears. I'm going to get deep, and we'll talk about next week's race. So, Saturday, the 11th of November, pretty important race, the North Island Team Series Race 4, held out in Masterton, and this did not go so well. So what do we got here? This was I was taking the leaders jersey into Master 1 category, and I had had to be aware of the point situation and how that was going to shake out. And I ended up losing the jersey to one Brendan McGrath. I'll tell you how that happened. Tell you where that leaves us for the final. Alright, so total ride time of 2:09, distance of 82.7 k's, climbing 587 meters. Not a lot, but a very important climb in this race. Second most important climb of the whole series, probably. 1929 kilojoules burned. That's let's say, I don't know, 10 hamburgers. We averaged 38.2 k an hour. Now look at this power. Sort of tells you a lot about what happened. An average of only 248 watts for an EP of 306. Now that's super low. I'll tell you why. Heart rate 142, commensurate with that. Maximum was pretty good, because I think my form is okay, but 175 beats, it's pretty high for me. Field training load 144, 2 active recovery days for something like that. Alright, so scrolling down here, very weird tactical race in a way. Really? Nothing happened until the final third of the race, where we were going up the steep side of Dry as Rock. There was a bit of a break. I should say before that, maybe a few k's before that, there was a good break containing Matt Webber. Now, he's not a huge threat in the points for the series, but I wasn't really that excited about him going away, and I asked some teammates to chase. And this sort of leads into what I'm going to talk about in a minute, what I learned, but my team weren't really strong enough to do that. And when I attempted to counter-attack on my own, do the old Steve Bale cruise missile off the front, I was immediately chased down by some guys from Tararua Builders, I think, who sat on my wheel and wouldn't take a turn. I don't know why. I don't think they had anyone in the brake. It wouldn't have done them any harm whatsoever to do that. But they didn't want to help me, which is bike racing, and that's absolutely fine. I turned around, I tried that maybe 2, maybe 3 times. I was a bit disappointed because some dangerous guys in the overall, like Andrew Young and Brendan McGrath, were way up the back. I just kind of honked up the side. They didn't come under me, and speared off the front. And these dudes just honked over to me and sat on my wheel. So that was pretty weird. I don't really know why. I don't really know what the tactical reason for that was. Maybe there was something really smart they were doing that I don't know about. I would have happily worked. But they didn't, so that wasn't great. So I didn't go do anything. So we head up Dryers Rock, the steep side here. Let's zoom in on this one. This was a little bit formative because Brendan McGrath hit this pretty hard. What have we got there? That's about 2 minutes, about 500 watts for me up Dryers Rock, so it's fairly strong. We continued over the other side, but it didn't really come to much. We may have dropped a few riders off. There's nothing I could particularly do, but Mark, Brendan and Andrew Young at that point, most of it came together again across the other side, and then it was all just going to be set up for the final. The breakaway were about 2 minutes up the road at this point, containing Matt Webber. There was another 2 guys off the front, only about 30 seconds in front of us. And coming into the final 20 Ks of the race, there was a period for a long time, if I highlight this, you'll kind of see, between Dryers and the final climb, about 20 minutes, where I averaged 190 watts, which is minuscule, and that's because all that was happening was the Roadworks team, who were not represented in the break, were riding on the front. Callum Kennedy riding really well, I think, like nothing crazy, just sitting on the front, tapping out a great rhythm, and that was good. And then joining in were Kieran Allwood, taking some turns, John Brandle coming in, taking some turns. They rode great, and my team were not there. They probably should have been. They probably should have been stronger. They probably should have been taking turns at the front and working with Roadworks. That's how it should have been. And I don't think the reason was because anything tactically went wrong. I think the reason was because they weren't strong enough. That's simple. So if they had been, we could have reeled in probably everyone. But they weren't, and that's life. So unfortunately, that left me in the situation of probably sitting on about 3rd, 4th wheel for that whole 10 or 20 Ks, cruising along behind Roadworks, hoping that they would be strong enough to pull the brakes in, which they weren't really. Late in the piece, Aaron Steig had to go off the front by himself, which was great. It's kind of rooting for him to stay away, but he didn't, got caught at the bottom of the climb. So we have a situation where 2 minutes up the road, going to the final climb here, which I'll highlight. We've got 2 minutes up the road, we've got a break including Matt Webber. We're never going to catch them. So a couple of guys who I think stayed away 20-30 seconds in front of us, must have, and kind of the battle looming on the final climb between guys like me, Brendan McGrath, Andrew Young, Callum Kennedy. And it sort of just grew in intensity. You can see here from the power from the bottom, you know, for the first minute we're averaging 340 watts, then after another minute we've been averaging 400, then after another minute we've been averaging, you know, 420. So it's just ramping up and up and up till a pretty steep ramp here in the middle, about 35 seconds, 560 watts. Feeling kind of fine. Brendan McGrath took a big hack up the outside, a very strong, powerful attack, and sort of got 20 meters on us. I don't have that sort of quick power, so I just concentrated on hauling away, and for the remaining, you know, couple of minutes of the race, not averaging huge power, although there was a little kind of flat piece about a minute before the end where the power came off a little bit before the final ramp and a big sprint, at which point the winners had come past. Brendan was about 10 seconds up the road, riding well, and we wasn't going to be caught. So a sprint between me, Callum Kennedy and Andrew Young, spread out across the road. Oh, Mark Donald and someone else had already gone up, taken a couple of seconds out of us as well. I was particularly marking Callum and Young at that point because they were closest in points. In the sprint, If I just zoom in here, sprint opened up about a 20 second sprint, 22 second sprint, averaging 700 watts. You can see in the final part of the sprint here, about 10 seconds, 845 watt average, and I just edged those guys, Andrew Young and Callum Kennedy, on the line. Very, very close. But in the end, the way the points worked out were not so great for me. So let's have a look here. If I look at the points, look at the results, we had Gary Hall taking the win from Matt Webber in second and John Mudgway in third. The guy, the two guys maybe I was thinking of are John Mudgway and Stuart Kilmister. Yeah, that must have been them. So maybe there was only two guys in the break 2 minutes up the road. Yeah, I think that's what happened. Okay, so you've got Gary Hall and Matt Webber fighting it out for first place. Yeah, so then 2 minutes behind them, you had John Mudgway and Stuart Kilmister, Tararua Builders and Cycle Nation. Then in fifth, 10 seconds later, Brendan McGrath, Steve McKinstry from Rivet, and Mark Donald ahead of me, 2:33 and 2:35. So just a couple of seconds, 3 and 4 seconds behind, 2 and 3 seconds behind Brendan. Then I was at 2:36 in 8th place, so 4 seconds behind Brendan. Callum Kennedy, same time as me, Andrew Young in 10th. So that was sort of a very intense final climb, and the way it works out for the points is that in the end Brendan is 1 point ahead of me for the jersey. I haven't done all the rest of the math on it. Matt Webber will be closer, but not super close. Mark Donald will probably be up there with a few points. Andrew Young will still be good. So, long story short, final race in 2 weeks' time. A second in a similar place, but much flatter. Tactically, this will be crucial to get right. With a point gap of 1, I need to beat Brendan and maintain against the other guys. I have some thoughts about how that can be done. In a horsepower battle, in most scenarios, Brendan will outgun me. So I've got to be smart. I'm going to have to see what I can do. But it's good having a hot race for round 5. I felt a little bit funny about losing jersey, but actually it's just bike racing. It's good. Let's quickly go over the race results for Elite and Master 2. In Elite, Dave Rollins apparently went away by himself, getting a minute and a half over second place. Anthony Nalder and Matt Webb-Smith in third. Jack Compton, mountain biker, 10 seconds later. Dave Rollins proving what a gargantuan time trial machine he is. Well done on that win. Interesting to see how the points are going in that series now. I suspect Marty Hartley-Brown's still in the jersey. Well, he is, because the picture proves it, but it will be getting tighter. Race 4, Masters 2. This is something interesting happened here. Rob Kilvington, who's always going to be an excellent climber on something like this, mountain biker, taking the win from Matt Stevens and Jeff Saywell, but kind of a bigger picture was the battle for the jersey between Hobe Buke and Gary Anderson. The expectation was Hobe would outclimb Gary, but an interesting thing happened where the report was that basically Hobe probably attacked a little bit early, burnt too many matches, and wasn't able to respond to Gary, who used his very good tactical knowledge to get in a couple of places ahead, snag the jersey, but regardless it will be super tight in points. Jim McMurray showing up, the ex-New Zealand hour record holder, took the record off me, coming in 5th place there, showing what a class act he is. So that's North Island Series 4, coming into race 5, super tight in the jersey race between me and Brendan and Master 1, and who knows, maybe someone else will sneak up and a Master 2 between Hobe, Luke and Gary Anderson, all to play for in race 5. Things getting pretty fruity in that race. So the other race I did was the Masters handicap, no it wasn't, Hillclimb, Hillclimb time trial, which was from Harcourt Park in Lower Hutt, Upper Hutt, out to summit of the Akatarawa Hill. Let's have a look at the data here quickly. The conditions were always looking pretty good for this. Like, it was a very light tailwind, which actually when you're in the valley can kind of swirl. It's not always like that, but no, the guts of it were, it was pretty good conditions. Very light drizzle in places. Nice low atmospheric humidity, and well, probably quite high humidity but low barometric pressure, so that was good for tides as well. What have we got here? 39 minutes 34 or so, maybe a couple of seconds less for that, for a brand new course record. I took the course record off one which has stood since 1998 in the club records, which was just over 40 minutes. So I took about 30 seconds off that, so that's good. The total climb was 525 metres, 21.1 kilometres, average 32 kilometres an hour. Average power 344 for an EP of 360, which I was pretty happy with. I felt okay, so quite happy with that. That's about the level of power that I wanted and expected, maybe even slightly better, because that average accounts for a lot of downhill sections. This TT, there's some flat, but it's just very rolling. I mean, you know, it's a hill climb, so it should be up. And in general, of course, it is. But you can see it's actually not a huge climb. There's just lots of little rollers and stuff, apart from the final. So if we just look into the data, you know, there's sections where I could just rapidly, you know, put out a decent clip. I was sitting at about 375 watts. Again, heading into the valley. Another period about 360 watts average. Start was good. Nice flat, easy start, settling in. Let's see, I always want to see my riders. 30 seconds into target power and speed. So easy. Speed acceleration, I'm into target speed 28 seconds. 54k an hour. It was a bit of a tailwind and a little bit down, so it was always going to be quicker there. Into target power by, well, a couple of seconds later, really, 29, 30 seconds. So tick on the start. Hunking along pretty hard, and the, you know, apart from, so in a TT like this, there's things you're cognizant of is, if it's rolling, you really want to be putting out a little more power anytime there's a headwind or a climb. So if there's a little climb or a roller, you really want to honk up there a little over threshold, on the basis that you'll be able to get a little recovery on the downside, and it will improve your time. That was the story of it really, all the way through till the final climb. And if I just zoom in here, you can see from the power pretty much where it starts there. It's pretty much the final 6 to 7, 8 minutes of the climb is it's quite twisty, but it's a relatively consistent gradient. Let's highlight the final 5.5 minutes worth. Average, and it climbs 122 meters. Average grade 6.2%. So the road surface isn't actually that great. It sort of sounds like it might be a nice fast kind of rhythm climb. Some places it is, but it's not ideal. Average power 403, sitting right on threshold. I mean, that's bang on hill climb threshold. That is really down to the watt. That's good. Average cadence 93, so heart rate 168. So just like very happy with that, sitting up in a very high position. Speed is relatively low, 21k an hour. Aero is not such a focus. And just trying to feel like a good, strong, hard rhythm final sprint to the end. It worked out well. So if there's anything I could say about that, it's have this idea in your mind that, you know, there might be good lines around the corner where you can keep speed up. There's a little extra. You might be wanting to use that technique where you go harder on the climbs and into a headwind to reel back a bit of time, to recover on the downside and in the tailwinds. You might want to make sure your starter's good, but the most important thing is really know your threshold power, drill that position. Mostly I'm talking about in the drops, because there will be long periods in any TT where you need to have a good low hip angle position to be able to produce that power, and use a power meter. And you know, I was talking to a guy before the race, and it's always the same conversation, which is, should I get a power meter? And then the conversation is, yes, but I have to convince my wife. And there is, I mean, it's not a gimmick, it's really important. It's just as simple as having an objective measurement. And you cannot determine that with feel, you cannot determine that with cadence, you cannot determine that with speed, any of those things. The only way you can determine how hard you are really working is through an objective measurement on a power meter, and the only way you know where to sit is by testing. Pretty simple. You can do an FPP test by yourself, or you can get the gold option, which is blood lactate testing with me. That's what I think. It worked out pretty good. Happy to get a record. That was nice. So what did I learn? Well, really recapping, not so much in the time trial, but in the road race, have as strong a team as you can. And that was literally the difference between me staying in the jersey yesterday and not. No, on Saturday, and not. So have a strong team as you can. My guys worked as hard as they could, and they didn't do anything wrong. Just could have been stronger. It's pretty basic. You know, it's not an annoyance thing. It's just reality. So something that came out of this time trial was just something I won't dwell on this, but I'll show you a picture if you're looking at the screen. If you're not, I'll describe it. I'll just scroll through here. Here's a picture of me yesterday at the finish of the Hillclimb time trial in Nakatarawa. And I don't know, that I put a caption or something on a picture on Facebook, and it said something like fat blue tiger or something, because I've got this look on my face, like a sort of looks like I'm grimacing and probably just gasping for air. And someone put a comment was along the lines of, you know, you're not fat, and how could you think you're fat? It's pretty weird. And it made me think about how people, especially cyclists, view their bodies and their fat percent and their body dysmorphic issues around that. Now, if I look at that picture, no, I don't think I really do look very fat. I've always carried a little bit of weight around my cheeks and my face, and that's just natural for me. And it makes me feel like I'm fat, you know what I mean? Like, and I think because it's this issue where if you are you focus in on the, you know, the little imperfections that you get to see all the time, and other people might not notice. I always was paranoid about my nose when I was a kid, because it's sort of like got a little stubby, it's a little bit stubby, and I don't really care about any of that now. Oh, particularly, I suppose you do, you sort of carry it through from childhood, let's be honest. And the fact that I've sort of carried this weight naturally in sort of my chin and my cheeks a little bit, and I think when I was a kid, like people used to say, oh, you've got stubby cheeks, and people don't realise that those sorts of comments can carry through for a long time in life, and even to this day. And so, you know, even though people think they're making a cute comment about a kid's appearance, commenting on children's appearance, I think, like, you have to be thoughtful about that, and realise that the image that people have of themselves can be formed very early, and almost maybe subconsciously. They may not necessarily think about these things, you know, on a daily basis, but it might be in the back of their mind. I think that's how it is for me a bit, and that's sort of why I made that comment. is because in some ways I do feel fat. In some ways it's sort of jerky fishing for compliment kind of jerky comment, because I mean I can see objectively I'm not really fat, and I know that because when I look at my arms and my legs, I don't think they look particularly fat. When I look at my body, I don't think it looks particularly fat. It's just those issues I mentioned before that are these sort of minor imperfections, and maybe to me, maybe no one else even notices, I don't know. And I think that's probably the same for everyone. I probably think some of that comes from childhood, and it's interesting. And I know because I determine my fat percentage using calipers and an electric scale, Tanita, every week. Now my body fat hovers between 9 to 11%, somewhere around that figure. So that's very lean. It's not super athlete lean. Tour de France climbers would be anywhere between 4 and 6% probably, which is incredibly lean. Most athletes are somewhere 10 to 15 range. Most good naturally lean climbers would probably lean somewhere between 8 to 10%, and guys who are more the sprinter and time trialist type might lean a little above that. So if I'm hovering somewhere around 10, that's by no means fat. So that's sort of some thoughts I had about those issues. And maybe if there's one thing to take out of it, it's that apart from the thing about comments to children and comments that spend a long time bouncing around your head, I think everyone has this if they're honest. There'll always be something. And it might not be appearance, it could be anything. But maybe the takeaway is, you know what, you could be fat. Maybe you have the other thing where you kind of have this anti-fat shaming attitude where, oh, well, big is beautiful and all that. No, it's probably not. It's probably unhealthy and you might end up diabetic. So maybe there's some common sense, which is, you know, actually determine what your body fat percentage is and your muscle mass percent. Don't use BMI, that's hopeless. Properly determine it. And then you know if you're fat. You know that if you're a woman and you're somewhere in 15 to 25% fat, I have to look at the charts, and it's pretty normal. Okay? You know if you're a dude and you're somewhere in the sort of 8 to, I don't know, 20% or whatever it is on the chart, you're probably normal. So there you go, that's normal and probably healthy for the great bell curve of the population. But this idea that, an unnatural idea about not even your appearance, about what reality is probably unhealthy in the lower, well, it is unhealthy in the lower and the higher end of those scales. And the question is like, what? You know, it's like, here's the thing, it's like looking at your body on a bike when you're a cyclist is probably a little bit like, sounds weird, like looking at a house. Have you ever had that thing where you look at a house you like, you know, say you're taking a dog for a walk and you're walking around and you see a house, you say that's a nice looking house, and you stop for a second and you maybe look at what they're growing in the garden and think, would that grow at my place, and what colour do they paint it, and I wonder who made the fence. And the same person who owns that house might actually look and they notice that the driveway's got some moss on it, and they notice that there's some roof shingles that are a bit loose and all this. And they're looking at exactly the same thing, but of course the difference is one person's noticing the minor imperfections, and that's because they live in it and see it all the time. And maybe it's healthy, assuming one, you do have a healthy body, and you've determined that objectively. Two, is just sort of like have that zoom out view. Okay, here's this thing I do. Hey, I'll let you in this weird secret, right? Here's a little tip, I reckon. Is if you're kind of wondering how to zoom out and do that, because it's easy to say you shouldn't focus on your imperfections, but how do you do it? Well, I think one way to do that is squint. So if you're looking at a photo of yourself, or you're looking at your house, or you're looking at something else that you that you see the imperfections in, but maybe other people don't. You want to know what it's like? Squint, make your vision bad, and look quickly. That's what most people see. They see a quick glance, they're not analysing as deeply, and if you squint and take a less detailed view, that's how other people see you. And maybe it's worth doing that because no one really wants to hear, sob stories from people complaining that, oh, my body fat's 10%, and oh, I wish it was 8%, and that would comprise about 800 grams, and that would make me 20 seconds faster up this hill climb. That's annoying for everyone who's a little bit fat, and maybe seeing it from their perspective, and it's the same thing. If your house has a couple of loose shingles and no one else notices, it's annoying to hear that from someone else who lives in this great house. It's annoying to hear, oh, my children, they're only taking advanced piano, violin, and Mandarin extracurricularly this term, and they've jolly well given up surf lifesaving. And everyone hates that person, and it's the same problem. It's this focus on nitty-gritty details, maybe at the expense of more happiness and joy in your life. So there you go. I think that applies to houses, children, extracurricular activities, and fat blue tigers. That's what I think. Thanks for watching/listening to Fast You Fall, brought to you by FitLab, Capital Cycles, Tailwind Nutrition, and Biomaxa. If you'd like to get in touch for a coaching program or testing, you can get hold of me, steve@fitlab.co.nz, or go to fitlab.co.nz. Talk soon, guys.